Welcome. I'm Joel Harmon from Fairleigh Dickinson University, a proud sponsor of this Prime Conference. And it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Mette Morsing, who's currently the head of the UN Prime Principles of Responsible Education for the UN Global Compact, and which she helped to create back in 2007. And subsequently co-founded the Nordic chapter of. She's been a co-founder of the Academy of Business and Society and held a large number of advisory and honorary positions in corporate and policy committees on issues relating to sustainability. She's widely published, including a recent textbook on corporate responsibility, and on how organizations are governed in the context of corporate social responsibility and sustainability, winning numerous awards for her research. So it's my privilege to turn the session over to Dr. Morsing. Mette, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much, Joel, for this lovely introduction and warm welcome to the 5th Prime Northeastern Conference. I'm honored and I'm very, very happy for your invitation to come here today and to talk about Prime, and also to talk about something that I really would like to hear your comments on, and I would like to engage a wider debate on. It is already going on, and I will present a little framework as part of the discussion here on the impact-based society. So it is a phenomenon that we discuss a lot, how to account for our impact, our social impact on the world. Some are doing better than others in actually, not in actually impacting perhaps, but in accounting for that social impact. So I'm going to present a sort of work in progress here for you, and I would love to hear your comments. But before I do that, I would like to give you, since this is a wonderful, and I would say true Prime conference with a global audience. I'm really impressed that you have managed to have an audience across 60 countries and 23 states in the United States. So I think it really has the vibe of a true Prime conference, being so globally oriented, even though I can see in the chat that some of you have a very, very late night out there in the Eastern Hemisphere. Mm-hmm. But let me share my screen with you because I have prepared a few slides here, and I just hope that you can you see my slides now? I think it's up there. So you may know that some of you will know that I stepped into the position as head of Prime about 5 months ago, and I was based due to COVID in the Scandinavian sphere of the geography. So I was there for the first few months, but then I was asked to come to the New York office since the COVID situation seemed to have been better at the time. So I've been in New York for the past couple of months right now. So I just want to remind ourselves that Prime was actually established in 2007 and that there is a strong support from the UN in actually having an initiative like Prime to think about, to focus about how leadership into the future via the education and also the research we do at management and business schools, how that importantly influence our educational efforts at our business schools and beyond. And it's fair to say that Prime is today the world's largest UN-supported initiative to engage management schools and management leadership development institutions to advance responsible leadership and sustainable development. Just to remind ourselves how the initiative has grown since 2007. Today we have about 820 schools signed up globally. And we have organized Prime in regional chapters. So right now we have regional chapters, we have working groups, which is another solid part of the PRIME work under different topics. And we have the PRIME Champion Program, and we have the SIP report, the biannual sharing information on progress that many of you will know very well, which is an attempt to actually account for what is going on at the individual school on improvements towards sustainable development and the sustainable development goals and responsible management.
Excuse me, Mette, I'm so sorry to interrupt. It might be easier to see your slides if you were to put it into slideshow mode.
Just slideshow mode, yes.
Bottom right-hand corner.
Yep,
Yeah,
I'll do that. Is that
thank
better?
you. Much, thank you.
Thank you, Joel, for that, of course. Today we have about, as I said, 820 signatories across 95 countries in the world, and 12 PRIME regional chapters is how we have organized the regional work that is going on. So it's any one of the individual institutions that have signed up to PRIME are in principle invited to be part of a regional chapter somewhere in the world. As you can see from the map here, we have a broad representation across the world, but there are also some areas where we still are working on developing. So I just put up here on the slide the 12 chapters and who they are, where they are placed in the world. And also you will see that PRIME chapter number 10, that is the PRIME chapter North America, which includes the United States of America and also Canada. It is led by chapter chair Elizabeth Collier from the Dominican Business School University. So a lot of work, and I will say these 12 chapters is actually the backbone of PRIME. This is where a lot of work is going on. This is where a lot of new initiatives that are locally adapted to the individual context of the PRIME work. And what I see these days over the past 5 months where I've been head of PRIME is I see the appetite for working across these chapters, actually to learn from each other, from, for example, the North American to liaise with some of the other chapters. And I've seen recently how the Brazilian chapter is working with the Central Eastern and Eastern Europe chapter, and also the Indian chapter. And that is about student engagement and about faculty development. And that is sort of a PRIME-led initiative. Since we have this global outreach, it is not difficult to find like-minded colleagues around the world. The PRIME, just a sort of a little check-in on the PRIME North America. So the PRIME North America, that may be of particular interest to some of you at least, was established in 2014 after a first meeting the year before, and then the chapter itself was actually established then. So this is 6 years ago, and today the North America chapter is the largest chapter of PRIME with 149 signatory schools and universities. And I think it's important to say that when we have this focus on business schools and management schools, that is very much where PRIME sort of come from. But what we see in particular also in a US context is that many of these business schools are of course part of a larger university system where other faculties of technical sciences or of maybe the natural sciences or humanities also become more and more interested in discussing responsible management and discussing the impact on sustainable development that they may have with their research and not least with their educational programs. So right now we're having a discussion across PRIME to what extent we could open more up for universities also in other parts of the world to actually engage, because we know that young students across the different faculties and the different universities will also importantly be leaders and make important decisions for the world. So how do we contribute to that these important decisions for the world will also have an orientation towards sustainable development? The other sort of important leverage that we have in the PRIME work is the working groups, as I mentioned before. And here in the working groups, we have a lot of research going on, and research with an orientation, a lot of it with an orientation towards how do we get this into the classroom. So we have, for example, work here on business and human rights and climate change and environment, where a small group of people across the PRIME community across the world have sort of, for example, invested in a lot of effort in developing a carbon literacy program that is now taught widely. Also at the Academy of Management has picked it up. And of course in PRIME, this is something we teach across, and we offer to our currently we offer to some of the chapters that take a particular interest in this. And the idea here is that we should have more and more PRIME community educated, you could say, as ambassadors, but also themselves as teachers of the climate carbon literacy training in order to make that grow and work. And you can see we have a PRIME working group on gender equality and on sustainability mindset and so on. So importantly, these working groups are not sort of set in one particular way to be governed or to be regulated, but it's very much a, you could say, a bottom-up initiative where a group of scholars across the PRIME community and across the world often come together to do research and to get that research into the classroom together. Right now, we are exploring two new groups, actually one on leadership and also one on sustainable finance, which we see our students and also practice becoming more and more interested in. So there's a lot of room for an opportunity for extending and expanding the working groups. The third thing that I want to mention about the initiatives of PRIME is the champions. And this is now in the so-called fourth cycle. That means it's the fourth group of schools that we have in a cycle. It's a 2-year cycle where, in this case, 38 schools have signed up across 20 countries. And they've been discussing over the past half year 14 different project proposals that they would like to engage in across this little community. And there's a lot of things going on in the champion group. I think some of you here in the audience are actually also part of this, as I saw some of your names before. But I think one of the important things that where I think has a lot of promise and which I have a lot of hope for, that's the PRIME blueprint for SDG integration in business schools. So the idea here is to come up, or this has already been developed as a template for how can this actually happen? And what we are right now exploring in the champions group is how can we put some content into this new template, you can say, and how can we get that into a website so it becomes a repository for true knowledge exchange on curriculum, research, and partnerships for business schools. How do you get started with this? And how can you get some good ideas if you, for example, want to teach sustainable development in your accounting course or in your finance course, then we would like this, or the idea is that this blueprint will be a repository to go and find inspiration and to go and find case studies, to go and find other courses, curriculum that has been developed, and to go and find great ideas for how you actually make this happen. So I think this is very exciting work. And again, this is actually a work that has sort of come out of a lot of schools' engagement in making this happen. Then I just wanted to take the opportunity also to tell you about a lot of the things that are going on. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but just to let you know that that what we two things I would like to mention in this respect is, for example, the point 5 here, the webinar series. So here we have every month a PRIME chapter talk, where a chapter around the world will be invited, or perhaps 2 chapters together will innovate and design a particular discussion over 1 hour, a topical hot spot, you could say, or hot challenge that is of interest for that region in the world. For example, we have had the Central and Eastern Europe to talk about some of the issues that they find. For example, from Moscow, we heard about the increasing polarization that is happening in the classroom and now in the virtual classroom, where students become more and more dependent on news they get from one source and not across the classroom, because they many of the students are left very, very alone in their dorms or in their rooms, wherever they are situated. In this was in particular from the Russian evidence or talk. So the professor, him or herself, become a very, very important dialogue partner for those Russian students. And we had a wonderful discussion about this at that webinar, so that prime chapter talk. The other thing that I have invited a number of deans to have a discussion about how they work with responsible management and how they support from a systemic level at their institutions the integration of sustainable development into their schools. I think it's fair to say that maybe 10, 15 years ago was often the business ethics professor alone in his or her institution that was leading the way on these important issues. Whereas today we hear a new voice where deans are actually talking about responsible management and the need for sustainable development, not only, but importantly, of course, in the classroom, but of course also across the school in general. And how that actually happens and the different ways of making that happen, the different incentive structures of making that happen is something that I'm having every month a dialogue with the dean about this. And I also wanted to bring to your attention point 9 here that we are discussing right now to have new chapters established. We're discussing to have a new chapter of Africa, a new chapter of China, and one for Iberia, and to re-engage some of the chapters that have not been so active over the past years. So this is just to say that there's a lot of things going on in Prime right now. And of course, I'm proud to show to you, if you have not already seen on our website, the new Prime board that had its first meeting, or was established in May, had its first meeting in August. And leading the Prime board as the chair is Ilian Michał. He's the dean at INSEAD in France, Europe, and Singapore. And you may recognize a few other people here on the scene. For example, from Michigan Ross, James Walsh used to be, a distinguished professor of leadership, of course, and strategy, but also was the president of the Academy of Management a few years ago. You may also recognize Tima Bansal, professor at Ivy Business School in Canada, and she is now also on the governing board of the Academy of Management. She's also leading, importantly, the big network, NBS, Network for Business Sustainability, about 8,000 individuals globally or as associations who discuss how academia and business get together to work on sustainable development goals. So I think these two individuals fit so very well into the Prime board and to the aspiration we have for the future. Yeah, and then there's a lot of other good people on this board, and I'm very happy to say it's a very active board. They keep me on my toes, I can tell you. I just wanted to share also with you that, again, back to my sort of the growth that I was talking about before, that in 2018, 2019, I just made a quick note here to you just to show you that actually we are still growing. A lot of signatories are still signing up, and we will be doing something more proactively to make that happen also into the future. But as you can see, 28 new signatories, new schools, universities from North America actually signed up over that 2-year period. So that's very, very good news that we are on the grow here. Now I would like to share with you some of the thoughts, some of the discussions that I've been engaging in over the past at least 6 months, but of course also before that. But in particular in my role as head of Prime, discussing across a lot of different, with colleagues around the world, but also with a lot of associations around the world. And the impact-based university is not a well-defined concept. And I think maybe that's the beauty of it, because we are all asked for our impact, to show, to narrate what is our social impact actually of the world. And I think that we're still practicing, as we can see also businesses are asked to sort of evidence their social impact on the world, and they are also experimenting. And trying out different ways of accounting for that impact that they play in the world. And I think the same is going on in the university and in the business school, management school universe. And it is definitely not an easy endeavor to account for your impact. There's a lot of discussion going on at the moment. So I would just like to come up with what does it mean? What is the definition of social impact? And this is from the Michigan Ross Business Plus Impact work. And it's a very basic definition of social impact is that it is a significant positive change that addresses a pressing social challenge. And social in the sense of environmental, economic, governance challenge, and the balancing of these challenges. So creating social impact is the result of a deliberate set of activities with a goal matching this definition. Back to the Michigan Ross definition. And I just brought here one, we can see that it's not something that we alone think is important. Also, the AACSB has just recently launched their new Standard 9, where they actually are asking schools to, where they're actually asking schools to demonstrate the positive change through internal and external initiatives and activities consistent with the school's strategies, policies, and expected outcomes. So there is also this invitation from AACSB for us as schools and universities to articulate and to demonstrate our impact on the world. I have for you here 3 more slides, and this is a slide I bring with me with one single purpose, and that is just to remind ourselves, because I think that a lot of the impact that's being discussed about business schools right now has much more to do with outcomes than impact. We are much better at accounting for our outcomes. And as you can see in this model, this is work that I've been doing with some colleagues a few years ago, where we were trying to assess cross-sector partnerships and their social impact on poverty in Africa. So this was a cross-sector partnership between a North partner, business partner, and a Southern NGO, and also single mothers in Africa. And we developed this model, and talking to the business, they thought this cross-sector partnership was fantastic because it was so helpful for the young single mothers in Africa. But when we, over a 3-year period where we studied this partnership, when we really dug into the essence and we went out and visited the single mothers in Africa on several occasions, we actually came up with quite a little bit of a different story. That what the business thought was sort of the success of their intervention and their engagement, the partnership with the African NGO and the African single mothers, ended where we here in this little model talk about indirect outcomes and direct outcomes. So they had a strategy, the business, to do good in Africa. They had some outputs, which was about employment, a better salary, education, and so on for the single mothers. And they saw some direct outcomes where the single mothers got they got an income, they got more knowledge, they got strengthened networks, and they saw some indirect incomes. They also got an increased sort of capacity to make choices and to actually have a work, and they got this improved education and so on. But when it came to the impact, to what extent these young single mothers actually had more empowerment over their own lives, to what extent they actually had a stable, enhanced income, to what extent they were able to send their children more regularly to school and so on. Those social impacts we unfortunately did not find too many of. So this is just to say that maybe we should, when we talk about business schools impact, we also should think very carefully about what is an outcome and what is an impact, and how do we already when we, for example, design a new research project, or we design a new educational program, or we decide to hire new faculty amongst ourselves, to what extent do we see that that may work and serve for social impact? And that's a question mark that I think we still need to engage in a good way. So the framework that I'm going to present to you here is the framework. It's of course a 2x2, and a framework to sort of try to start a discussion on the impact that we engage or could engage as business schools and as universities. And on the first row, I have the qualitative impact and the quantitative impact that we do as business schools. And what I call this the high business school impact. And the question we ask ourselves to a large extent is, how do we as business schools account for our own success? And I think very much that is what we see today in a lot of ways where we try to account for how do we make a positive impact on the world. And the question is if these are impacts or if these are actually outcomes. For example, on the qualitative scene, one of my colleagues she's working on the REF system in UK universities, which is the 5-year sort of external or review or internal sort of revision of how do we make, how good is the school at delivering on a lot of different criteria and a lot of different issues. And of course, the impact is one of them. And here, what she's seeing is a lot of qualitative impact that's being reported also. And that is, for example, on business schools' vision and strategies. It is on collaborations with different partners, and it is much of the kind of qualitative impact that we also see in the reports that are sent to PRIME, the SIP reports that I mentioned before, the sharing of information on progress reports, where schools are accounting for their visions, their strategies, and their courses, and so on. And some of the other associations are also asking for this qualitative impact. For example, AACSB is also asking us to do that. Setting, you could say, the tone from the business school top. The quantitative impact that we very much refer to here as the business school impact is oftentimes our AJG publications, the 4-star aspiration. How many publications did we publish in the area of sustainable development, responsible management, that we can put a number on and belonging to what category inside the AJG ordering list? It's also the rankings, the Financial Times and other rankings where we can compare and contrast ourselves vis-a-vis our peers or our competitors. It's also the ratings that we see, and it's also very often the Google Scholar citations. I've often heard talking to professors around the world asking about what they think is their most important impact. And the answer often comes up, oh, look at my Google Scholar citations. That's my impact. And of course it is an important impact, and also the impact that we as professors are assessed by oftentimes. The AJD ranking list and the Google Scholar citations and other kinds of rankings are often where we're often built into the incentive structures of our schools on our advancement to become professors and to become excellent and stay excellent professors. So that's sort of the first row. And the question is, of course, if this is enough, which is why I suggest the lower row here, which is sort of focusing more on the high societal impact, where we sort of a little bit change the question and instead ask, how is society transformed with the help of business schools? So the focus here is how we are advancing society, how we are improving society, and perhaps less ourselves as business schools. Of course, these things are related, I understand that, but of course the focus is more on society. And one thing that I can see business schools are right now working on seriously, a number of business schools, is to redefine the business school purpose as a social improvement, more so than a sort of reputational improvement. And of course, here we can ask, in the qualitative impact, so sort of what are the mechanisms that can stimulate and account for a sort of unique illustrating examples of how the world is changed and improved via business schools, education and research. And I think, for example, some of the work by, if I can make an example, some of the work, for example, on modern slavery that has been done by, for example, Professor Andy Crane and his team in Bath, has indeed shown that and not least Genevieve Le Baron, of course, also has certain, that in those investigations on modern slavery has on a number of occasions challenged some of these businesses that suddenly got their eyes open for the kind of modern slavery that they engage in, perhaps knowingly, perhaps unknowingly. So these are, you could say, qualitative impact that sort of changes those individual businesses, and hopefully you could say on a larger scale, also some of the associations, for example, in the textile industry, working on modern slavery, where our research can actually help to do so. Same with Professor Laura Spence at Royal Holloway, University of London. So her work on corporate social responsibility in small and medium-sized enterprises has indeed engaged her with ILO and their definition of corporate social responsibility, with a particular angle for small and medium-sized enterprises, and also her work with the United Nations Global Compact in a local setting in Denmark, where she's working with them, with the Global Compact, to deliver a white paper for new government regulation in order to be sure that it is an informed choice that is being made based on her research. So these are sort of qualitative impact of with a societal purpose in mind. What I've got over in number 4 of the scaling in the right corner of my low corner of my 2x2 here is scaling business purpose for social improvement. So are we able to somehow come out of or sort of move beyond the individual collaboration with a business or with an association of businesses, but actually scale business school purpose for social improvement? Are we able to, by our research and our education, to have a quantitative impact also, and to actually account for that? And I'm putting it as, again, this is work in progress. I'm putting it up as for you to discuss with me, I hope, to get some comments on this, but also for us to push us a little bit to think, could we actually scale this business school purpose? For example, I think one example is the concept of the planetary boundaries that was developed by some of our colleagues in Stockholm. And that concept not just raised Johan Rockström's Google Scholar citation impact, but indeed has been seen to be uptaken by countries, by businesses, by associations, and have had a lot of policy implications based on this concept, on the research that lies on this. And I have not seen how Johan Rockström and his team, and at the Stockholm University, how they have sort of accounted for this social impact that they have actually had. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but I think it is worth considering how we could do that. The same with all the work that is going on gender and racial inequality, and how that has sort of, or not, that research, how it has and has not changed the world to the better that perhaps one could hope for, but then of course also to ask ourselves, why has that not happened? And then not least our students. How is it that we actually think about the impact we have on our students as they are in our classrooms, whether they are virtual or physical or some hybrid version at the moment, but also so that we're not only interested in measuring those students as they enter the business world or the organization world and become leaders. We're not only interested in how much their salary increases over the next 2 or 3 years, as in some of the rankings, but we're actually interested in what they do and what decisions they make and how those decisions impact the world. I'm not saying it's easy to account for, but these are sort of the type of questions that we need to think about into the future. And then I just wanted to sort of finish my presentation here with a slide about some of the social impact categories that I think we will have to think about in the future. And I've already talked about number 3, the qualitative and the quantitative impact, and also a little bit about the local impact. I think it's very important that many business schools are small, many universities are small, but they have a very high impact locally. And how do we account for that? And how do we allow those local important impacts also to be part of the narrative? Lastly, I want to mention the concept of impact potential, which is a concept that I've been working on with some colleagues. It's out in a journal soon. It's about the impact potential, that we actually think about the impact, not just in the past sense, what impact did we have when we look back, but also we think about the kind of impact we can have upon the future, and that we think that potential into the decisions that we make as we go on. On that note, I want to say thank you very much to Prime Northeast for having me, and to Rutgers Business Schools for organizing this fantastic conference with an impressive program, I must say.
Thank you, Mette, for your very encouraging update on how rapidly Prime is expanding in the world, and for sharing the next level of aspirations for business schools to have impact. We don't have much time for questions, so one was simply, you spoke about the repository for Prime. How does one add resources, go about trying to add resources to the repository?
Yes, thank you for this very, very good question. Maybe I can simply ask you to send me an email, and then I will direct you to the persons working with this in my team. Yes, I'll just write my email out here in the chat.
Okay, that was Ricky Abzug, who was curious, but if anyone else is, you can communicate with Mette, and she'll give you the directions of how to add material to the Prime repository. A somewhat similar question was, could you say a little about the process by which a university can qualify to become a member of the Prime network?
Yes, I can. That is very simple. Send an email to us, and then we will set you up with colleagues. And I guess the question is also, one thing is you sign up as a school, but also how do you become part of the larger network? And what we do now, what we didn't do before, but we do now, every time a new school sort of becomes a member of Prime, then we make sure to liaise that new school with the regional chapter. So if you are in North America, for example, we will directly liaise you with and connect you with Liz Collier, who is the Prime chapter chair of North America.
I just wanted to add that Liz will be speaking for a few minutes on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock.
Wonderful.
And we look forward to working with her.
Yes, yeah. Wonderful.
Ikedirachi Ogamba, and I apologize if I've pronounced that name wrong, asked, beyond Prime, which is focused mainly on targeting business schools and education, does the UN Global Compact intend to facilitate and support education for sustainable development initiatives and integration of SDGs into other disciplines in schools and higher education?
Thank you so much for this question. I cannot tell you how much this is on top of my mind. Right now, United Nations Global Compact, they are in a big strategy process over the next 2-3 months, and I've actually managed to get myself into that into the working group, the strategy working group, because if there's one thing I want to do with Prime, I want to do many things for Prime, but that is also to make sure that we are central for UN Global Compact and what they do. For example, Global Compact, they have their own academy, and of course we should work, not as two separate entities, but as one entity. So that is what I'm doing right now. I'm bringing us together. So you know that Global Compact has about 11,000 schools globally, And there's a lot of research, there's a lot of education that we can do together with these businesses. And there is a big, I can just tell you, there's a big appetite in Global Compact to also collaborate with us, also at chapter level. So thank you for that, for allowing me to say this by that question.
Yeah. I think we're pretty much out of time, but I'm just wondering if you could give a quick answer. What did you mean about future-proofing when you spoke at the beginning? Future-proofing business schools.
I think that this impact discussion is very important for us to be aware of the kind of impact. And if I can maybe a little provocatively say that maybe some of us have been a little, closed about our own impact, our own measurement, sort of the way that the incentive structures in many schools are set up. I think now is a wonderful time to think, like I know when I see what you're doing in Northeast here, exactly, to open up and to think much more about how do we engage with society, and not just from the business ethics professor, but also from the Department of Finance professors, the Department of Accounting professors, of logistics, and so on. So this needs to be a cross-disciplinary exercise from of course all departments in a business school, in a management school.
Thank you. And I would just commend to everyone who's interested in how to go about integrating Prime into the business schools to take a look at those blueprints that Mette Morsing referenced, which are there at the Prime site. They have a wealth of very practical, insightful recommendations of how to go about being a champion for this in your school. Now, so Mette, thank you very, very much for this. I believe now, Gina, that we need to have people switch over to Zoom Room A.
Correct.
So go back to Enter G. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Mette. That was fabulous. And I have to say, I've loved being a player and leading the Prime Initiative for RBS. It's been a joy and a privilege. And thank you for joining us today. I hope you can stay for more of the sessions, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.